What's that?
Your button works again. I forgot.
Hello and welcome to the After Hours Lounge. John Schreiner here with you. Jimmy is off tonight, so you get the John and Dan experience on this Tuesday edition, a Wing Tuesday edition of the After Hours Lounge. Got a good show planned for you, or a terrible show, depending on how you feel about us. Coming up at 6:15, we're going to talk NFL coaching carousel. Some curious decisions have been made regarding coaching staffs in the NFL. Dan and I will talk about that. Brian Munson's going to join the show to talk about the absolute flurry of offers that have gone out from the Nebraska coaching staff over the past week. Dan's got a social media soundbite. Bob Williams is going to stop in to talk some sports law, and he's going to stick around and do buy or sell with us at 7 o'clock. And then we'll give you the trash takes of the night to close it out and send you on your way on this beautiful Tuesday evening. What a beautiful day it was today, Dan. Did you get outside?
Yes, I did. Came back from the gym. All windows
Man,
on the car were down.
These days, when we get these kind of days in January, it always feels just like it's like finding $20 on the ground. You know what I mean? It's exactly that same feeling of like, oh, how lucky am I?
56 degrees feels like 80.
Man, lovely. Just lovely. And now, like, February is right around the corner and is just going to punch us in the face with a polar blast. You know it's coming.
Oh, yeah. I've been saying it this whole time. Interpersonally, with everyone that I can speak with, I'm like, yeah, it's nice now, but just wait until we get a foot of snow in one day in February.
Well, that's the other thing I saw today was that this January is the lowest amount of snow that Omaha's ever had on record. 1 inch of snow accumulation is the lowest total ever. It's nuts. Houston, Texas has had more snow in January than Omaha, Nebraska.
I'm actually surprised that we even got an inch worth of snow.
It's nuts, man. Like, literally, we've never seen anything like this. And today was a $20 bill on the ground day. We're going to start the show with a conversation about dynasties. And my assertion, dynasties are always built to die.
I mean, it's true.
It's a cliche, right? What goes up must come down. And it's true for every single thing. Everything that's built must fall. At one point or another, it's coming down. Nothing lasts forever. But when you're in the midst of it, especially in a sports dynasty, it can feel invincible, right? Like, I just want you to remember how you felt during the 90s in Nebraska. That's the one around here that most people will identify with. 94, 95, 97, it felt like Nebraska would never be bad at football ever. Like, it seemed almost unfathomable that they could lose a game, right? Like, this would never happen. It felt the same way in the early 2000s with USC. Do you remember those times in the early 2000s, USC football?
Oh, yeah. When it felt like they couldn't be beat and they would never be beat by anybody.
Like, this program will never be bad ever again.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt like, how could you ever stop the momentum that they have? Like, they have built something that is just unbelievably unstoppable. The 2010s Alabama.
Oh.
Who could usurp that? Like, how did you feel during that time watching Alabama win title after title after title after title? Like, it just felt like this train was never going to stop, right?
Yeah, it was a little bit, especially with Alabama, it was a combination of awestruck, how do they keep getting away with this? And then just, open and shut. The case was always just open and shut. It was like, all right, Alabama's in the national championship again.
They were preseason number one like every year.
Maybe it'll be closer this year than it was last year. Spoiler alert, it almost never was. But at times, maybe. There was always a hope.
And the other one in the NFL that has some recency to it was the Patriots.
Who?
Exactly. Those Patriots. And it's a little different in the NFL because even a dynasty has years when it's not perfect. But it just felt like you could almost pencil in the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship game at the very least every single year for about 15 or 16 years. And it, like, honestly, you just started to wonder, like, is this ever going to end? When you're in the middle of that, if you don't have like a wide angle view, it feels like this is the only thing that's ever going to happen. It can feel like an inevitability.
Yeah, well, and it was, especially with those Patriots teams, it was quite literally something catastrophic has to happen.
Tom Brady had to break his knee.
Yeah, for them to not just automatically win, to not just chalk it up, automatic W column.
But I'm here to tell you, we're in the middle of a run right now with the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts to feel inevitable. It has started to feel like there's just not really a way to get them off the throne.
So I think it's a good point that you bring up, John, because the 2 years before this, I would not have felt that way specifically. This year, with how many one-score games they were in and pulled out of, and then especially how close they played that AFC Championship, now it has gotten to the point for me where Patrick Mahomes is inevitable. The Chiefs are inevitable.
They have all the stones in the glove. Snap the fingers, Super Bowl title.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Early 2000s USC, 90s Nebraska, 2010s Alabama, Patriots in, post 02. It started to feel like that now with the Chiefs. I'm here to tell you, though, this thing is reaching its peak. This thing it's kind of reached the mountaintop. And there's a reason for that. It's not because Patrick Mahomes is declining. He's certainly not. He's still in the prime of his career.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because there are major problems with the organization or any of that stuff. The thing that's happening is the man in charge, Andy Reid, is now 66 years old.
You think that's where the downswing comes in? Because I was waiting to see, when I saw this in the lineup,
Yep.
I was waiting to see how you were going to speak about the other side of it. Because I would argue that they might still be on the uptick. And caller, I'll be answering your phone call here in just 1 second. John, take it away.
The oldest coach to win a Super Bowl championship is Bill Belichick. In 2018, he was 66 years old. The NFL is different than college football. I mean, that's a very obvious thing to say. But it's different in a way that you may not think about every single day. It's different because every team you face is made up of the best players, the best coaches, the level of focus and intensity and planning. If it's not elite, you're not going to win. And that sort of mental bandwidth at some point starts to become unavailable, even for the greatest of all time. How much longer does Andy Reid have left at the peak of his coaching powers? 2 or 3 years?
I would honestly, when you say peak of his coaching powers, I'd honestly argue 5, maybe 7 years.
66. Bill Belichick is the oldest coach to ever win a Super Bowl, Dan. 66.
I don't know.
Andy Reid's 66 right now.
So I don't know if Andy Reid has any vendettas against anybody, but I mean, honestly, as long as he can use both legs and walk out, I have a feeling he'll be on the sideline coaching the Kansas City Chiefs.
Steven's got a thought about the Chiefs dynasty. Steven, you're on After Hours. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I got you. What do you have to say, Steven?
Oh, okay. So, just listening to how you guys talk about Andy Reid and how he's going to continue to stay on with the Chiefs, right?
Yep.
I genuinely think if you have somebody that's approaching a potential third Super Bowl in a row,
yep,
even with him potentially staying with the team after, I think any coach wants to be going out with glory. I think if he wins the Super Bowl, this is it. This is going to be it. This will be the end of the dynasty for Andy Reid. Now, the team, I still will think will still be successful going forward, but I just don't think Andy Reid's going to stay.
Yeah, and thank you for making that point, Steven. Thanks for calling After Hours. Appreciate you.
Yep, no problem.
This is where this conversation is headed next. If the Chiefs win a third straight Super Bowl, Andy Reid will be the only coach that's ever done that in the history of the game. The Chiefs will be the only team that's ever won 3 straight.
Yep, I'll save my thoughts on that specifically for Buy or Sell. But yes, they will be the only team to ever win 3 straight Super Bowls.
And as Steven points out, if there's an exit point, if there's an off-ramp to this whole thing for Andy Reid, here it is, baby. There's a big sign. Exit 3.
Yeah.
Right off I-29. This could be the way to go out in your blaze of glory. You tie the record for being the oldest coach to win a Super Bowl. You win 3 straight. You're the only one that's ever done that. This would be a good spot to do it. Maybe he hangs around for a couple of more seasons. I personally think the money would be on him staying for maybe 2 more.
Honestly, I think because Andy Reid's not a dumb guy. Definitely has his coaching smarts, in the back of his brain.
Oh, for sure.
There's a part of me that thinks if he thinks he can get another championship and become the oldest head coach to win a Super Bowl, I think he would do it. And in all of his media availability this year, there has never been a doubt in my mind that man just wants to coach ball.
Sure.
There is a drive and there is a sparkle in his eye when he talks in the post-game presser, when he talks in his weekly media availability, that he still just loves football and that he wants to be a head coach of this team for as long as he possibly can. He has not come directly out and said it, but I would put money on just at 5 years. If he doesn't win this year, I'd put 5 years on it.
There were questions whether he was going to come back for this season, though. I mean, if you remember the offseason conversations right after the Super Bowl last year, it was like, well, like when is Andy Reid might be ready to hang? I mean, he's got 3 with the Chiefs now. He might be ready to hang it up. If he gets his 3rd in a row, I think those conversations are going to get even louder. He's like 66 years old, man.
He's
like,
66.
It's a conversation that's going to be had. And when Andy Reid does hang it up, I'm not saying it's this year for sure. Can't see into the future. I don't know. But what do we know about all those other dynasties that I mentioned? When did 90s Nebraska's dynasty end? When the coach left.
Yep.
When did the early 2000s USC dynasty end? When the coach left. When did the Patriots dynasty end? Well, that was when the quarterback
when Tom left.
Right.
When arguably probably the 1B of greatest football minds on that team left.
When did Alabama's dynasty end? Is it over? I think it's over now.
Probably. For now.
They're going to have to start a new one.
I'm giving Kalen DeBoer 3 years. Until I go, yeah, there you go. Same old Alabama.
What I'm saying is...
And I think there are people in Alabama who would agree.
It's generally the coach hanging it up that signifies the end of a great run. That's generally the marker that you can point to and say, that's when it was over.
Yep.
The Cowboys. Jimmy Johnson left. That was it.
Gone.
The Cowboys' great run was done.
Yep. There's a part of me, though, which is why I'm still on the uptick thing, where they're as good as Patrick will make them. And if Andy Reid were to retire this very moment, right now,
before the Super Bowl?
At 8 p.m. tonight, Andy Reid is
That'd be a weird move.
Andy Reid is like, I just can't do it anymore. I watched so much. I just watched the Buffalo tape, and it's overwhelming my mind. I'm done coaching football forever. See you guys later. There's a guy sitting on his left-hand side right now, because that's where I think defensive coordinators sit, Steve Spagnuolo, who I think would still be able to lead this team into glory. And I know
I'm not convinced, man.
Your argument is that he's done it before.
Some guys are good coordinators and some guys are good head coaches. And Andy Reid is an offense-first head coach. Spagnuolo would be a defense-first head coach. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I think they'd still be good because you still have Patrick Mahomes. I think you'd still be a very good team.
Yeah.
I don't think it's dynastic. But sometimes, like there is an outlier here with the Patriots. Mm-hmm. Like if you look at Bill Belichick's track record without Tom Brady and with him, they're very different stories. Sometimes it is about the player. At least one time it's been about the guy.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the same deal with Patrick Mahomes. Maybe it isn't. But we don't know what would have happened to Tom Brady without Bill Belichick. He had 2 seasons in Tampa, still got a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty good evidence. Bruce Arians was his head coach during that time.
Moderately good evidence, yeah.
But we don't know. We don't know what it looks like. It's a new era when Andy Reid finally does hang it up. Is that this year? I don't know. But to me, what I'm saying is I think the Chiefs are reaching the peak of their dynasty. This is the top of the mountain right now.
Fair enough.
And if they win this 3rd championship, I think the downhill slide begins. That doesn't mean they're bad. That doesn't mean that they couldn't win another Super Bowl on the backside. The Patriots did it. They won a Super Bowl on the backside of the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era.
Oh, yeah, they did. Mm-hmm.
But what it means is they're no longer climbing. They've reached the top. It doesn't get better than it is right now.
No, it does not get better than 3 in a row. It does not. If they can, this will be their peak.
Dynasties are built to die.
Yes, they are.
What goes up must come down. Valar Morghulis. For you Game of Thrones fans out there.
Valar Dohaeris.
All right. After Hours rolls on. Tuesday show. Brian Munson. Coming up next, we're going to talk all things Nebraska recruiting. What do you think all of these offers mean? Is there a pattern to any of this? Are we learning anything new about the kinds of players that the new look Nebraska coaching staff is after? We'll ask Brian about all that and more. Coming up, it's the After Hours Lounge, 1620 The Zone. Hey, everybody. John Schreiner here for Jerry Ryan Clothing and Sportswear. You've been hearing me say it. We're coming to the end of January. If you haven't gotten to 78th and Dodge just yet, you need to do that very soon because it's a January clearance spectacular. Huge sale, 50 to 75% off suits. You need a new suit for the new year? This is the time to go get it. Suits and sport coats, 50 to 75% off. You need polos, you need shirts, you're looking for sweaters, still got some winter left, 25 to 50% off all of that. And jackets. You need a good jacket. Maybe you're looking for a light jacket as we head towards spring. Just stash that in the closet and break it out once the weather starts to warm up a bit. 25% off jackets. Don't go through the rest of this winter looking like a schlub. Get yourself some new gear. And as always, they got the best from Johnny O, Peter Millar, Cutter and Buck, all with the Huskers and Jays logos on them. Get yourself to 78th and Dodge. Tell John, Dan, Jake, Deanne, and Monier the Taylor that you heard about it on the After Hours radio program. Jerry Ryan's been dressing Omaha for over 50 years. You know what that sound means? After Hours. Brian Munson, the crossover that everybody asked for. After Hours is brought to you by Bellevue University. Go be a Bruin today. You don't have to go to class on Friday. They've got the major that you're looking for. You can do most of your education online. Brian Munson has joined the chat. Brian, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, just holding it down here on a Tuesday. Jimmy, he decided he had other things to do tonight, so it's just me and Dan hanging out.
Oh, so when the cat is away, the mice will play. Huh?
Yeah, I suppose you could say that. I don't know. I'm bigger than Jimmy though, so I'm not the mouse.
I got you there.
All right. So there's a whole bunch of recruiting news that's come down in the last week. Just an absolute deluge of offers have been coming out of Lincoln with all the coaches on the road. Obviously, so many, like we're not going to be able to get into any of them. But I think the big question is the trend, right? Like with this new look coaching staff and all these offers that you're seeing, have you been able to maybe get a sense of the kind of players that we're looking for, maybe at a specific position where we have new coaches installed?
I don't know if I necessarily kind of gotten that far into it. The one thing that I'm writing my screen out right now, by the way. So I literally have one of my sections to talk about one of the trends that I picked up on last week. It was so evident, so clear as I was going through retweeting, liking, following, all this stuff. Oh my goodness. They went on an absolute tear of edge, outside linebacker, and offensive tackle offers to 2027 recruits. Mm-hmm. It was like nothing I had ever seen. It was just like every tweet that I saw was to an edge or an offensive tackle. And, it's very interesting because obviously I had written in 3 and Out a week ago that I was a little bit concerned about where offensive tackle recruiting was kind of at. First of all, Jackson Cantwell something clearly has changed there a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't feel like Nebraska has got a lot of things going on with him there much anymore. They didn't go to see him this spring. And he's not coming in for this junior day this weekend. But there are some other guys coming in. And I think one thing that everybody needs to kind of know about those guys is that I had mentioned, 2 of them in my tunnel talk last week. I was like, look, these guys they've seen Oregon twice, they've seen Tennessee, there has been just a lot of traffic. Claude and Palma from Illinois is one guy that I'm talking about, and Kelvin Obat from Idaho. They just had a ton of traffic through their high school to see him, and it's been really difficult to kind of see, Nebraska, being there, in Nebraska didn't go see, Kelvin until late last week. So it was just like, even though Nebraska had been trending for them on 3 and they still are the leader by percentage, it was just very difficult to kind of see it and sum it all up and say that, things were looking very good. But both will be in Lincoln this weekend, which is huge. And then there'll be a couple of other offensive tackles. But I think then the recruiting kind of moved over to the 2027s. It was really, like I said, focused on outside linebacker, offensive tackle. Saw a 2028 quarterback, very athletic dude from IMG Academy. So maybe if you want to say something else about that, it is that, athleticism, dual threat kind of quarterback, maybe a guy that Holgorsen, is a little bit more interested in maybe taking a look at to potentially add to the room as it goes, like with the offer that they made to the freshman in Florida.
One of the other things that's come out this week is the transfer offensive lineman from Notre Dame. Rocco is his first name. Rocco Spindler. What a name. He is apparently considering Nebraska. Do you have any insight on this potential transfer target?
Yeah. He's in Nebraska today. I think today was the first day of his trip. I think there's a possibility that he'll still go take another trip after after this one, but I had heard earlier today, I think things look good for Nebraska. Let's just put it that way. Really more of a guard, not a guy that, people are probably saying, well, I didn't anticipate that happening. I really could have seen Nebraska maybe going and grabbing another tackle, maybe a guy that had some center experience. He doesn't have any center experience. He's really a guard, not primarily. He is a guard.
Yeah.
That's all he's played before. So I think that this tells me that, after 2 weeks of not hosting a portal target in Lincoln, Nebraska finally saw a guy that they felt like they could put him into a room and they were better with him on their roster. And I think that that's kind of important to kind of pay attention to, just because, Nebraska's still 20 to 30 guys above the 105 mark.
Yeah.
Every time they're going to bring somebody else in that needs one, other one has got to go.
Or more than one.
Yeah. And it's really one of those things. It's just, it gets to be, a management, and a painful one at that, to really gain control of your roster and get it below the number where you need to be, later on this spring, this summer. So it means a lot, I think, to have him come in, just because of where they're at with the numbers and the fact that they have not hosted anybody else for the last 2 weeks. It says a lot about him as a player.
You mentioned that the recruiting is kind of flipped to the 27s. We've got the junior day coming up. Who are the most interesting guys to you coming in for this junior day?
It's hard not to say the offensive tackles again.
Yeah.
I mean, just the offensive tackle position is so critical in the 2026 group. I don't want people to kind of say, oh, well, you're throwing towel in on the Gibbs Piles and the Grant Bricks, and the Preston Talamuas. I'm not. I think we would all agree Nebraska has come up short when it comes to the real, bookend offensive tackle guys. And, the long 6'7", truly athletic, kind of guys. And I just don't feel like they've been able to get that guy. They haven't been able to get that guy through the portal, really at all either. I mean, they missed out on the number one guy last year, and it looks like so far could be that they're out of it with, the number one guy this year. So I'm going to say offensive tackle. And then I think what's an interesting story, and I'm mentioning this in 3 and Out tomorrow too, has been the work that Dayton Raiola has been putting in when it comes to recruiting. So now he, is personally responsible for bringing in a couple guys this weekend. There's a Lincoln Watkins, who is a 3-star tight end, who will be in this weekend. But I think the one that everybody needs to kind of get to know is Ryan Mosley, who's an on-300 athlete out of Carrollton, Georgia. Last week, he wasn't 100% sure if he was going to be able to make it in or not. Got it confirmed earlier this week that he was going to be able to get there. So that's a big one. I mean, when you start seeing some dudes that are responding well to Dayton being the quarterback, I think that when you put Dayton and Dylan, into the room, into the environment of the junior day this weekend, it's going to have a great touch. It's going to add a great touch to it all, because they'll have a chance to see and talk and, basically communicate with those signal callers that they're going to be around for the next 5 years. So I think that that's really huge, to have those guys being impacted, or having the class impacted by Dayton, working the phones and getting some guys to fall into Lincoln.
We're talking to Brian Munson of On3, talking all things Nebraska recruiting. A heavy impact in Florida in this cycle of coaches going out and visiting schools. I mean, it doesn't seem like the staff has a huge connection to Florida, but they're putting a full court press on down there. What do you make of this big focus on the Sunshine State?
I think everybody knows how big of a hire Coach Mosey was.
Yeah.
And I think everybody knows that Keith Williams has really become, one of those top recruiters for Nebraska. Bringing back Coach Simpson to be part of Coach Rule's staff really gives Nebraska a legitimate person to put him into Florida and, put him into the high schools, let him go around the area. Obviously his ties are a little bit more to South Florida. But he's been up in Orlando. He's been doing other places, around the state. And that place is just massive. So he's a guy that's comfortable that you can kind of put out there and let him just kind of go to work and pin his ears back. And that's exactly what he's done. His Twitter feed has been amazing to see the kind of ground he's covered. So I think what people have to kind of just remember, with the class that gave you Barney and gave you McGahee and the other guys in that class and Shavers, he was personally responsible for kind of putting that group together. He was really the lead recruiter on all those guys. And you kind of have to find like that guy, like a Barney or somebody else who has ties to other guys, kind of get in that group of friends and people that are familiar with others. And then they all of a sudden they want to kind of just go follow each other and go play football together. So I think that's where he is really, really, really going to pay off with his connections down in Florida in general, South Florida specifically.
Winter workouts going on right now. Have you heard anything about the early enrollees out of this 25 class?
That's a good question. Have I heard anything specifically about this group? I'm going to say not yet, but maybe I'll take that back. I think maybe I have heard a thing or two about Christian Jones.
One of my favorites.
I know he is, and you and I have talked about him. I think that people don't understand how developed and put together he really was.
Yeah.
He is really got a nice frame on him, but already, comes in there with that development that he had. People, obviously saw some of his athleticism, for being a linebacker, but I think people just really really underestimated the type of frame that he had and the type of size he had when he came in. So I think I would put down that Christian Jones has been one of very few comments I've heard so far about the early enrollers. So that's what I'll go ahead and say about that.
All right. Last one here, Brian Munson, we'll let you get out of here on this. The Senior Bowl stuff. Matt Rule was out there. He's photographed with Thomas Fidone standing on the sideline at the Senior Bowl practice. What's the gab out of Senior Bowl?
That all three of the guys down there from Nebraska are massive. All three of them really taped out incredibly well. So it's Tommy Hill, it's Fidone, like you had mentioned, and Ty Robinson, right?
Yep.
And I think Ty came in at, like almost 6'5", and Fidone was 6'4.5", and Tommy Hill was, well over 6 foot tall. But, it was kind of like the size of the length, the arm length of Fidone and the hand size of Fidone, and Hill has the same kind of deal, the reach kind of going on, to go along with that 6 foot plus frame. So he plays a lot bigger, than what he is at the 6 foot frame. So, and that's what you're kind of looking for, right? But and then Nash was kind of having a great week too, and Nayor has been doing some stuff at UNT this week as well. So I'd say all the guys that are kind of out there representing Nebraska this week so far have done a great job, whether it's been like on the field performances and their one-on-ones or just simply just taping out. And that is a huge emphasis by this coaching staff, although I know that Nebraska really didn't recruit those guys, that are there right now, but it is a huge emphasis by Nebraska to get some of those guys that have those kind of tape out, like their huge wingspans, huge hands, massive necks and chests, and stuff like that, to where that's going to really put them in a spotlight when it comes to the NFL draft, the NFL combine.
Well, I mean, I think Ty Robinson was rated as the 10th defensive tackle in this class in the NFL draft, and I'm just like, somebody's going to get a steal if that's the case.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I see that guy climbing into day two. Yeah. Honestly, I really do. He's so disruptive and has got such a great motor, and the capability to run out from a 3 to a 4. I think he could play a 4 in a 3-4 and just be a massive anchor out there. So, yeah, I think he's a much more versatile guy than what he gets credit for.
All right, we didn't get to talk about the Bills, Brian, but I'm guessing you probably didn't want to anyway.
I think once the concussion happened in the first half, I was ready to kind of mail it in. They didn't
Yeah.
they didn't do anything to change up outside of that, man. If they would have gone back and dropped into a zone and disguised some things, I might have thought they were trying, but they just kept the same game plan. I was kind of disappointed in that.
Yep, and the Chiefs dynasty just rolls on. What else can you say?
Yes, we'll have to wait for another year or so.
I know it. And Washington didn't make it either, so we're both disappointed come this new year.
Yeah, I think you guys got a little bit more going on than we do, though, when it comes to the future. So we'll have to see what happens with Buffalo in the offseason.
All right, man. It's Brian Munson,
All
Husker
right.
Online on 3. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, be good. Later.
All right. And Brian's out quick. He's not messing around tonight. He's got to write his segment.
To be fair, that's the first time that I think I've actually had someone hang up and hear the dial tone, especially from Brian. Usually he thinks he hits the off button and sets his phone down. You hear him go,
Okay. If you missed that segment, check us out at soundcloud.com/afterhours1620. It's brought to you by Controlled Comfort Heating and Air. It's fall, it's winter, it's past all of that now. And if your heating and AC system isn't working properly, you need to get that sorted out. Give Controlled Comfort a call. They will come out, they'll check you out, they'll get you sorted quick. You don't want to be messing around with it at this time of year. It's nice out right now. This is a good time before we get back to the cold stuff to have your system checked out to make sure you are ready for the inevitable polar blast that's around the corner in February. Get Controlled Comfort out to check your system out today. Hey, everybody. John here for Pepper Jack's Grill. You know what goes really well with a nice day in January? How about a steak rice bowl from Pepper Jack's? You roll up there. You don't even have to wear your jacket in. You just walk right up to the counter. You say, I'll have a steak rice bowl with jalapenos, green pepper, put some Fireball on it. And when they get done with that, you throw on a little bit of lettuce, maybe some extra cheese. Oh, get the queso. That's my pro tip to you. Get them to put the queso on your rice bowl. It is just that little extra something that makes it oh so good. But whatever you get, whether it's a Philly, whether it's a salad, if you're eating a little bit healthier, or the rice bowl, it's all good at any of the 10 great locations. The fries are excellent. The sauces are great. Whatever you get, you're not going to be disappointed. Get yourself some Pepper Jacks tonight. After Hours on a Tuesday, brought to you by Bellevue University. Head over to bellevue.edu. Become a Bruin today. Don't go to class on Fridays. Friday class is for suckers. Go to Bellevue University. Check out all the great programs. You can do most of them online. Daniel Kampanen
That's my name.
has a social media soundbite.
Yes, I do. We're going to do a little take a listen. We're going to get a little backstory tonight.
Okay.
Gentlemen, did you think this day?
So if you don't know who Dominic is, because that's very Italian and very obvious name, everyone should know who Dominic is in this situation. That right there was 31-year, 284-day-old Dominic Shine. He is the 10th oldest player to ever make his NHL debut. He's been with the Grand Rapids Griffins now for about, I want to say 8 years. He's actually, if you want to do recent memory, he is the oldest person in recent memory since the 1970s.
Wow.
74 to be exact, to make his NHL debut. And it means a lot. This is call him a kid. He's literally the exact same age that I am. But this is
He's a kid to me.
This is a kid who every Wednesday night after nightly practice and skate would come into Vango's Pizzeria, would order a large pizza with banana peppers, black olives, mushrooms, and Kudigi sausage on it. Couldn't have been a nicer kid. It feels good to know that he gave it one more year and the Red Wings noticed and got depleted enough that they finally brought him up and put him on the roster. And it helps too. Hometown kid. Grew up a Red Wings fan his entire life. He's from Grand Rapids. So brings a little bit of a tear to my eye to see Dominic finally get the shine, ding, 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 that he deserves.
Yeah, we don't hear about these things very often because when you get to that age, right, when you hit 30,
Yeah.
that's when, like, if you haven't made it to the bigs by then, that's when you start to think about, okay, I need to do something else now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once you've hit 30, it's kind of like, well, maybe this isn't going to happen. It happened to me at about 19, but it's a cool story just from the persistence, the never ending belief of someone staying with it at the minor league level for that long.
Yeah.
And having never cracked an NHL roster to be able to finally do that. Yeah, you're right. It's really cool, man. It's just one of those stories that solidifies again why we love sports. Like, this is the passion that we see from people who have honestly, like, what reason did he have to keep believing? What reason did he have to keep showing up for, I don't know. What was he getting paid in the AHL?
Not at probably beans, to be honest.
$45,000, $50,000 a year?
Maybe if that.
There are guys who are making more than that in the AHL who were drafted high and are like, they're young. They're like 19, 20 years old who are fresh out of juniors, who've signed a 2-way contract or whatever it may be with their signing bonus, and they're making decent money. But the guys who've hung on for this long, who are on their second or maybe third contract with an AHL team, they're not making that. They're making, I would guess, maximum $65,000 a year to beat the hell out of their body on a nightly basis.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, when you're in the AHL, you're traveling so much more than you are.
And it's bus travel, a lot of it.
Yeah, on an NHL roster. And, you're not staying at the fanciest hotels. You're not always getting the greatest treatment that you could possibly get. So, and I ran into him like about a year and a half ago at like an alumni event at NMU. And, I was asking him, how's it going? Miss seeing you play with, in the AHL. I haven't, gotten out to any games, haven't gotten to like see you play at all. But I was like, I'm glad that you're still grinding it. And he, had that look of someone who was on the edge and was real honest and said, he's like, I might not be much longer. It's like, if I don't get that call in a couple of years here, he's like, I'm probably going to have to hang up the skates.
Yeah. So I just looked it up. The minimum salary for an AHL player is $52,000. So I guess, yeah, the minimum salary. The average AHL salary as of January 2025 is $54,791. So we're not talking about like big time money. Like you're making it, like you're living.
Yeah.
You're not living large. You're scraping by, right? Like,
yeah, you're not buying the new house.
No. If you're a single person making 54,000, you're fine. You're okay.
Yeah.
You're not in poverty. You're not big balling and flexing. Like,
no, you are not.
You're certainly not doing that. So, I mean, when you talk about the love of the game, when you talk about passion, when you talk about playing to play, that's the level you're talking about. That's where it's at. Those are especially for somebody who's 31 years old doing that. Like, you can understand if someone who's like 18, 19 to 24, 25, still chasing the dream.
Yeah.
Making that much money, maybe don't have a family yet, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Sacrificing some things to try and make it to the bigs. Like, you hear about that a lot, but once like 31 and this guy's got kids, like,
yeah,
that's tough. That's a rough spot to be in, man. And
yeah,
the dedication's incredible.
And
so
just to give him his props just one more time, this is how he's always been.
Yeah.
He was overlooked when it came to getting recruited for college, came to NMU on a flyer, made the team, ended up on line number 1 by his senior year, and then has to start all over again in the AHL because he didn't get drafted, signed a, take a look at me contract basically with the Griffins.
Probably league minimum.
And they took a look at him. And they looked for a long time. And it feels so good to, when I saw that come across my timeline today and I saw his name in the box score last night, I freaked out. I was like, yes, he finally made it. Because I've been waiting for this day for so long.
That's awesome. All right. Well, that's your social media soundbite. If you missed it, check out soundcloud.com/afterhours1620. And it's brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing. Hey, you got a business? You need help with your social media? You need a new website? You need some online advertising? Well, pixelfiremarketing.com is here to help you out. Social media experts can ignite your social media presence, entice your ideal client to engage your brand, and help you grow your business. Everybody's looking for growth. Everybody needs a helping hand. Check out pixelfiremarketing.com for more information. You got Bob Williams from Williams Law coming up next. Hey, everybody. John here for AX Plumbing. Hey, listen, you ever been standing in your bathroom and the sink just slowly fills up as you're brushing your teeth or washing your hands or whatever you're doing, and you're like, I don't like that, and I don't want to go digging around in the pipes either? Well, got just the people for you to call. It's AX Plumbing. Check them out at axpservice.com. Maybe it's your shower drain. Maybe you've got other plumbing issues, whatever it is, they can come out. They'll get you fixed up in a jiffy. axpservice.com. That's the place to go if you've got issues with your pipes in your house. axpservice.com. John Schreiner, Dan Campanen back here with you on a Tuesday after hours radio program. No Jimmy Allen tonight. What's Jimmy doing? We don't know. We don't ask such questions. He's just not here. That's it. That's the end of that story. And we start hour number 2, which is brought to you by Pyramid Contractors. Over a decade of being the number 1 roofer in Omaha. You need help? Check out pyramidroof.com to get yourself a free estimate. And now it's time for Bobby Law. Bob Williams of Williams Law joins the program tonight. Bob, how you doing?
Good, John. Good to be in here with you and Dan tonight. Sans one Jimmy. Kind of interesting.
It's good that Jimmy's not here. Okay, well, that's a new one.
We'll take it. Do we have a legal claim for degradation of duty?
Perhaps you do.
I think it's dereliction of duty. Dan.
Their
I think
election.
All right, you know what?
That's the
It could
phrase
be
you were looking for.
degradation as well. You
Fun
can go
fact,
either way.
mic off. I can do that from over here.
Okay. We have to start by talking about your Eagles. You must be absolutely thrilled that they're back in the Super Bowl again.
Yes, it's fantastic to see. I mean, this newfound running game this year has really changed the atmosphere. And they've
Oh, you mean Saquon Barkley was a good pickup?
Szechuan broccoli. Have you seen those T-shirts?
No.
By the way? Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah, the Saquon acquisition, the offensive line has progressed. I mean, Cam is not an all-pro, but a Pro Bowler.
Oh, yeah.
Did have to go in and play the second half, as you saw on Sunday. Their defensive line is playing incredibly well, and then their acquisitions on the back end of the defense too have stepped in. Now, for your team, I mean, you got to be thinking things look pretty positive moving forward, no doubt about it, right?
Well, I said this last night. I did not expect to care about the Washington Commanders after October 1st this year of last year. Like,
Sure.
I was not expecting it to be anything that I was terribly interested in paying attention to. Call it reading history, like whatever you want. Rookie quarterback. I didn't expect much out of it. But man, what a surprise. What a season. And now like the arrow's clearly pointing up for this franchise with the new
Absolutely
ownership and the new coaching staff. Like, honestly, to make the NFC Championship game was beyond anything I thought was possible.
What were
for
the
that
odds
group.
on that, I wonder?
Oh my goodness, I can't even
Preseason, I have
imagine.
no idea.
Not anything I would have bet on. I'll tell you that much.
Well, these two teams should be fighting it out for the next few years for the top spot in the East.
You'd
I
think
would have
so.
to think, and-
You'd think so, unless Brian Schottenheimer can turn the Cowboys around. We'll talk about that later.
That's a whole nother ballgame.
All right. So we got some sports law issues. Normally we talk about like some very big picture stuff.
Sure.
We've been talking about, House v. NCAA, all that stuff. I wanted to do something a little closer to maybe what the kind of things you represent,
Sure.
right? Like something that would be closer to a situation you might find yourself in. And the thing that stuck out to me was this case in California, and it has to do with high school track, where there was an all-comers event.
Yes.
So they invite these athletes to compete in this preseason track tournament where anybody can enter. It's not skill level, age. It's not really a factor. It's just sort of a training event where you can come, you can enter. And what happened in the 600-meter race at this event, this junior at Valencia High School, Alexandra Grande, entered the 600-meter race, and she fell
Yes.
and tore her ACL because she was stepped on. Now, who she was stepped on matters in this case.
Maybe.
It wasn't another athlete. It was actually a coach who had entered the field as a pace setter
Yes.
because the first two heats they felt had gone out too fast. So they asked one of the coaches to step in and be a pace setter. This is who tripped her. This is who stepped on her. And now she is suing the State Athletic Commission for her injury. What do you read into this case?
Okay, so I did review the case, and I think this is kind of intriguing. I'd like to lay out the facts in a little more detail. As you said, this was an all-comers race, meaning anybody within the state could show up and actually register on the day of the race for all these different tiers of racing, and this was the 600-meter race. And the facts were that this pace setter was a coach that also volunteered at the meet, and it was discussed with him and the people that run the meet that they were worried that the athletes would get out too fast and set too fast of a pace and then have a terrible last 2/3 of the race. So it was advertised to the public as they came in to register that there would be, for this race and I think a couple of other races, pace setters who would be coaches, and they would be. Now this was a excuse me, this was a women's race, and there were some assertions that because there was a male that was the pace setter who had a bigger physical stature, at least than the
Right.
plaintiff in this matter, that should be a piece of the puzzle that would weigh in the plaintiff's favor. Now, again, she did tear out her knee, did file a lawsuit, and let's back up a little bit here. So, first of all, we're talking about sports. Sports are very unique. I mean, this is track and field. We could apply this to football, basketball, soccer, hockey, baseball, but for public policy reasons, we want to have people that are willing to participate as athletes, as officials, and go to things as spectators. And the doctrine of assumption of risk can apply at all three different levels, maybe a little differently, but certainly for the athletes in this scenario, there's always in literally every sport, there are chances of getting hurt if there's physical activity. Now, football versus track,
Yeah.
different. Soccer has high number of concussions, different than maybe even baseball, where you might tear out a knee more likely, or if you're a pitcher, you're going to have
Elbow.
arm injuries, elbow and arm. But in this scenario, and it went on appeal and was ruled that the athlete in this situation had assumed the risk, which negates any liability for normal occurrences that are foreseeable within that realm of the activity. And a torn knee, it's well known from racers in any track scenario when you do a waterfall lineup, which is where they curve up the edge of the track with dozens, presumably, of athletes in the same race, and they all are trying to get out and then lean into the narrower lanes, right, the inner lanes, to get an advantage. That there's going to be some bumping and grinding. Rubbing is racing, as they
Yeah.
as they once
Well,
Tom Cruise once said.
she says the racer testifies. She says the quote in the story says, "You assume the risk of, I guess you'd say, impeding on another runner, but yeah, everyone knows you could get elbowed, you could get tripped up in the beginning. Everyone knows that." So she obviously knew that there was a risk involved.
Yes, I think that it would be ignorant for her to state otherwise, because
Yeah.
I think she had run other races. And anytime you've run a race, again, as I said a few moments ago, you're going to get bounced around a little bit, and people do get hurt. You see that in the Olympic trials, the Olympics, on high level, track and field events as well, racing and jumping as well. But in this scenario, she was trying to differentiate it because there was this pace setter, and the court ultimately determined that there were two significant factors. One is it was an all-comers race,
Yeah.
meaning that there was going to be different levels of competitors, now albeit women, but of all size ranges and athletic abilities, and that the over the course of the presenting this to the public, the race holders did announce that there was going to be this pace setter. Now, the plaintiff in this case did try to allege that she was not made aware of this, but when you go to the ballpark and you see foul balls may hit spectator,
Yeah.
there are assumed risks with things, and you just pleading ignorance that maybe I didn't see that sign doesn't mean that I'm immune
Sure.
from that risk. And so the court, I think, ultimately did the right thing here, because it was a normal type of activity that comes with the territory. Now, if there something else had happened during this race, maybe, I don't know if they run around a football field or something, maybe a sprinkler pops up that's not expected to pop up, trips somebody, and they break their ankle. Okay, that's not maybe within the realm of expected potential injury that would be contemplated by a race goer that's signing up for the event. In that scenario, maybe somebody that runs the race or owns the park or owns the field could be held to be somewhat liable for the damages. In this case, monetary damages.
How do you think this differs from something like the concussion lawsuits in the NFL, where obviously players assume the risk when they're out there playing the game? They know that there's violent contact between players. They know that there's potential for injury, and yet the players won in that case, that them stating they were unaware that the risks were so severe.
Sure. Well, I think you go to the advent of the term CTE,
Yeah.
right? And if you've seen the movie or read the book or seen anything related to that, they, I don't know how many hundreds of millions were paid out to former players and their families from maybe 2006 and before, 2008 and before. As they move forward, these players all go through these training sessions, these advisory sessions on what concussions are. It starts in college, maybe even sooner, maybe in high school, to where they're made risk aware
Yeah.
of these things. And, you hear players saying, well, I risk it all for, a touchdown in the Super Bowl or a ring on my finger. You see other players stepping aside earlier on in their career saying, I need my marbles to move forward in this life. I think that there's enough public knowledge at this point in time and enough education of the players that it now is an assumed risk, as long as we're not talking malfunction equipment.
Sure.
And clearly the equipment, the rules, for the most part, have been pared down to the point or been held up with the equipment to the point where those risks are minimized, but they will never be zero in any of the
Sure.
sports, especially football and soccer.
I thought it was interesting in this case that, as you mentioned, they didn't accept the assertion that because this was a male coach, because physical stature, they didn't accept the assertion that the risk was increased by inserting this person into the field who otherwise would not have been there.
Yep.
And that's simply because it is an all-comers race.
The
if they're-
nature of the meet.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what
yeah.
They cited in there. Yeah.
Does it make a difference to you in this case had it been an age-limited competition?
I think had it been age limited, there might have been a little more ground to stand on, but I still think the race was predicated by knowledge of made available to the racers that there was going to be a pace setter.
Mm.
And I guess I don't know how many of them may have known it was going to be a male. And the article I read didn't give his stature. I don't know. Is he Andre the Giant that somehow can run around the track at whatever pace it would be at 50-second pace?
The quote is a rather large adult male.
Okay.
So,
well, I still think that if it had been age limited, there might be a little more argument to it. But again, the nature of the race being, an all-comer race, and knowing that guy's there, there's still going to be that inherent risk. And I would be really surprised. That'd be a really slippery slope for a court to rule against a party on this type of case, because they're actually doing it for a safety reason in its own right.
okay.
And if it's not unreasonable, I don't think they're going to make that stretch.
Would there be a factor that would change your mind here? Well, would there be anything that could have been brought out in this case that might have made you say, well, maybe they have a case here? I mean, a different circumstance, perhaps.
I think there could be some slightly different facts, whereas maybe he was wearing some shoes that had some spikes or cleats on that maybe weren't allowed, or maybe he was wearing protective gear on his arms, or maybe he had his phone in his pocket or a clipboard in his hand that cut someone, or maybe cut her leg. And he's not wearing the clothes that are normally incidental to be worn for that type of race. I think those are small factors that could have weighed into it. And then obviously intentional acts by him would have clearly been, I mean, we're not talking assumed risk when there's intentional acts, because assumed risk is for negligence cases. For intentional acts that harm someone, that's a whole different area of practice, and certainly somebody would be liable for that.
And it also, I think, brings up an interesting conversation about governing bodies and their responsibility to the safety of athletes, even in cases where there is assumed risk. I mean, how far does their sort of liability for protecting the athletes extend?
It's clearly sport dependent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, every sport has its different tiers of foreseeability for injury. Again, and we talked about referees,
Yep.
a couple of weeks ago, and the actual participants. I think that right now, even in Nebraska, there hasn't been a whole lot of cases litigated specifically with regard to trying to hold the race holder or the parties that are sponsoring the race or the event as liable. Because usually when you see an injury, there's going to be subsidy for medical care. In fact, what I didn't get out of this article for this gal, Alexandra Grand, is, did she have health insurance? Did they pay for things? Were we talking subrogation or reimbursement to them? Is
Yep.
she trying to prove a point? I mean, those are things I don't know that I would like to know the answer to. Because in most cases where a party's hurt or injured by an arguable act of negligence at a sporting event, there's going to be some type of coverage. Now, if you're talking something that would impact the rest of their life, where they might be physically impaired, that would affect their ability to compete at a higher level? Were they potentially good enough to play at a higher level, or
NIL comes into play then?
NIL comes into play, or alternatively, maybe it would affect their ability to earn, like a head injury
Yep.
later on, some type of permanent impairment that would have a traumatic brain injury. And again, when you talk about, for example, car racing, there's an assumed risk of potential death, right? Like
Yes.
that is part of that deal.
And I mean, I'm not a lawyer. You are, so you can speak to this. But it would seem to me in the case of accidents where personal injury occurs, and there doesn't seem to be like obvious gross negligence or intent, those cases would be like immensely hard to litigate.
Well, you're talking the theory of negligence, and if there's if a party's injured or damaged financially by something that's foreseeable by the adverse party, then sure, the initiating plaintiff could recover, and clearly also insurance comes into play if you're talking automobiles or property or things like that. But yeah, there has to be foreseeability as a generic predicate or prerequisite for that, for a party to really have legs to stand on to sue a defendant to actually hold them liable for negligence.
One last thing on this, and I don't know, maybe I'm off base here, but is there any consideration given to the fact that the athlete in question here is a minor and may not be fully aware and able to assess the risk involved in this given situation?
I think that's an interesting question. I didn't read anything or wasn't able to glean whether or not there were any waivers signed or consultation forms or family that signed off
Yeah.
on this, parents or guardian that were part of that. I think that it being a race that had all comers, including minors, kind of widened the scope a little bit too, as we said earlier. And I think it probably made it more difficult for them to recover as well.
All right. Well, it's an interesting case
It is.
and one that like I said, I think is closer to something that you might find
Sure,
yourself
sure,
in
absolutely.
front of a personal injury case, which is
Yeah,
something I'm sure you
absolutely.
deal with.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Bob, thanks for being here. You're going to stick around for
I'm
buy or
sticking
sell.
around for another segment. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
We're going to get to buy or sell coming up in just a moment on the After Hours radio program. If you missed it, Bob's chat about an interesting case out of California in the legal world. You can check it out at soundcloud.com/afterhours1620. Brought to you by Controlled Comfort Heating and Air. You need a refresh on your HVAC system. You got problems. Maybe it's not been working the way you want. Well, now's a good time. Warm weather is here, but that's temporary. It's going to get cold again. You can guarantee that. So get yourself some peace of mind. Have your furnace checked out before we get back to the frozen tundra of the Central Plains. It's Controlled Comfort Heating and Air. We're going to get to buy or sell coming up next. Oh, you know what time it is? It's time for Buy or Sell. This hour is brought to you by Pyramid Contractors, #1 roofer in Omaha. You need a roof, you need Pyramid. Check out pyramidroof.com and book yourself a free estimate. Dandy Daniel Campanen has our buy or sell questions. Bob Williams kind enough to stick around to answer some buy or sell questions with us tonight. So Dan, you've written questions. We will answer them.
Yes, I have. A lot of talk has been happening this week, and rightly so, about the Chiefs making the three-peat. But not so fast, Cotton. Has the NFL forgot that they played football before the Super Bowl era? Buy or sell that teams like the Green Bay Packers should have a claim to the three-peat moniker?
I think I'm selling on this because what we're talking about is Super Bowl championships. And in the Super Bowl era, no one's done it. So, yes, we're splitting hairs a little bit. We're making a distinction that isn't really a difference. But, I mean, there is a little bit of a difference here. So, no, I'm selling. Green Bay won 3 NFL championships. That's true. They didn't win 3 Super Bowls, though. Sorry, Dan.
I agree, and I'll take into account the asker of the question, the purveyor of the questions, allegiance here a little bit.
Oh, no, Dan Campanen, hey.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. I'll sell on this one as well. If I can't remember it, it didn't happen. How about that?
Yep, there you go. What do you say, Dan?
I buy.
Of course you do. Big surprise.
Because our three-peat came on the back of an NFL championship and then the first Super Bowl, which was ruined because old Mr. Hunt down there in Kansas City said, well, we want to be on the same footing as everybody else.
Mm.
And then, of course, Paul Tagliabue was like, I'm fine with making that kind of money. So I'll give the Chiefs their due. It'll be 3 Super Bowls in a row.
If they win, they got to beat the Eagles first.
They do, which I doubt is.
Hey, don't sell Bob short. Come on.
I would never. Speaking of selling, we have a team that bought today. Cha-ching. That is all that Shane Beamer has been hearing today. After leading the Gamecocks to a 9-4 season, the school is extending his contract through the 2030 season. Buy or sell, the $8.15 million a year contract is going to be right for the University of South Carolina.
I believe he gets a $100,000 raise per year as part of that deal as well.
Contingent upon a winning percentage, yes.
Yeah. So, look, South Carolina had a tremendous end of the season. Like, they were not thought of to be much at all. They were predicted bottom 3 in the SEC, I want to say. They were not. I think it was like, I know Vandy was picked last. I know that. And Mississippi State was picked second to last. I think South Carolina might have been picked third from the bottom in the SEC. Shane Beamer did a marvelous job with that team this year. I think they had to pay him. Like, you can't just ship that out of town after you've had a 9-win season. We know what happens when you fire 9-win coaches. Not a good idea. So I'm buying, man. I think they had to do this.
I don't mean to be a yes man, but I totally agree with you. I think in this day and age, that's not as much money as it seems compared to what other teams are paying. Mm-hmm. I think you got to spend the money, keep them in-house, and keep the trajectory moving upward.
And yeah, I'll agree. I was perfectly fine with it. It makes sense after taking the South Carolina Gamecocks of all teams to a 9-4 season that Shane Beamer would, kind of have the proof is in the pudding year to say, hey, I want to stick around, but maybe you got to pay me a little bit more. And South Carolina did not bat a single eyelash.
No, I mean,
and said, well,
they've got the money
for another year. How about another 5? We'll keep you around for as long as you want to be here, Shane.
That's a lot of years. And, a side note to this is I kind of thought that these long-term extensions were going to go away with the revenue sharing model. Like, because coach buyouts are not just going to be handed out anymore. Like, schools are not going to be able to afford to pay coaches not to coach there. At least that's what I thought. So, I mean, a 5-year deal, that's a little surprising to me. I mean, for Shane Beamer, it's surprising to me. Now, I think he should have gotten an extension. I think 5 is maybe a little excessive.
The pot of money is just too big. So
well,
I think, that's the bottom line.
You may be right.
keeping it football centric, the famously not going to the Super Bowl Denver Broncos
Mm-hmm.
have taken their time away from football at this point to do something kind of all right.
Kind of all right.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's
Owner and founder chair and foundation chair Kerry Walton Penner and owner and CEO Greg Penner,
Walmart money.
yes,
Mhm.
are donating 15,000 plus new Riddle Axiom helmets for free to every high school program in Colorado. Buy or sell that this is the partnership that you want to see out of an NFL team.
This is exactly the thing that NFL teams should be doing. Look, the money for NFL franchises is astronomical. I mean, the Washington Commanders sold for $6 billion with a B dollars. And part of that is Dan Snyder being complete jackwagon and just putting a ridiculous number out there that he thought nobody would pay. But $6 billion valuations are kind of the norm for NFL franchises right now. And if you run a business that's valued at $6 billion, especially in a sport where participation is declining because of safety issues, these are exactly the kinds of things you need to do to keep your sport healthy. And if you want to keep making money, this is more than just, to me, a benevolent gift from the Denver Broncos. This is, hey, we would like people to keep playing and being interested in football. So let's try to keep the young players safe. Absolutely buy.
I totally buy as well. I think they're in a unique spot with the population of their state. You don't see a team in California or Texas or Florida doing this, right? At least to that exponential level. But this is the type of thing we do want to see from these billionaires giving back to their communities, to their statewide football programs, or other sporting.
You
programs,
own the Denver Broncos and Walmart,
particularly for the safety feature. I mean, that's why they're doing it. Obviously, they could branch out in other types of protective equipment, et cetera, or other sports as well. But no, I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Now give a raise to all your workers.
I was going to say, and to John's point, if your franchise is worth $6 billion, how much do you think 15,000 Riddle Axiom helmets would just roughly cost the Denver Broncos?
They're probably, what, $250 a piece?
$300 a piece, probably, right?
Yeah.
Buy in bulk.
Like $450,000, $500,000.
Someone has put a number on this that I don't believe, but it is Brett Coleman, so I'll give him a 50-50 shot. He's saying it's roughly going to cost them about $15 million to get and distribute all these helmets. I don't believe that the Axiom costs that much.
I'm looking it up right now.
It's not tippy top of the line, but it is top of the line.
How much does Riddle?
Particularly with their
Axiom?
partnership with them. And
Oh
the
wow,
distribution channels.
it's more than I thought.
How much is it?
They're like $750 a piece.
Oh wow.
Triple your,
yeah, that's
your initial estimate. So yeah, maybe it is over several $1 million.
Just the quick math. Yeah, 11.2 million just in cost. I imagine they're not paying $750 if they're buying 15,000 of them. So, but I mean,
ship them and all the other costs. That go
I
along with it?
I would bet that they're paying around 10 million just for the product. So yeah, I mean, okay, that's a little different. That's a good chunk of change.
Yeah, not chump change for sure.
I didn't know how much football helmets cost.
Who knew?
I haven't bought one in a while, and I didn't think they had gotten up to $700.
I'll tell you something, Dan. I've never bought one.
I think you never had to buy your helmet for Pee Wee football?
No, I didn't play Pee Wee football. They didn't have it.
You
know where I grew up?
Pee Wee football?
Do you know where I grew up?
Platteview or Platt Smith?
No,
It's
that's
one of the
not where I
Platts.
grew up. I started junior high when I lived in Springfield.
Oh.
I grew up in Nowheresville, Nebraska. Like, seriously, the sticks.
Right next to Minoe?
Dude, 5 miles from the Kansas. Point at the middle of the state and draw a line to Kansas. That's where I lived.
Okay.
There wasn't Pee Wee football. Are you kidding me?
Fine. So.
We played tackle football at the high school game on the side. That's what we did.
That makes sense. So it's getting even easier right now, this very moment, to believe that spring is right around the corner. But college hockey is just starting to heat up.
All right.
Boston College, Michigan State, Western Michigan, and Minnesota sit atop the standings as we are today. Buy or sell that one of these teams has a chance to win the Natty.
Yeah, those are the teams that always have a chance to win the Natty. Like, when are those teams bad, honestly, in college hockey?
Yeah, 4 of the more prominent names, clearly.
Western just about every year. Western hasn't had a solid college hockey season where they have made it to the Frozen Four in quite a while. It's been at least since 15 that Western has had a solid chance to make the Frozen Four.
Yeah, I don't pay like super close attention to college hockey. I'll be 100% upfront and honest with you. Not like I used to, like when I was in college at UNO, paid very close attention to college hockey, not so much anymore. But like, I mean, Boston College. Yeah, Boston College or the Field. I'm probably taking Boston College.
Okay. Because in this case, I personally, Dan Campanen, would take the Field. Because Michigan State this year has been on what can only be described in college hockey terms as a literal generational run.
What's their record, Dan? You know?
I do. I have it actually right in front of me. This is when you get really bored during the day. You didn't hear that, bosses who might be listening. 23-3. They're 10-1 and 1 at home, and they're 7-2 and 2 away.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, Michigan State's the one. They have poured, and I literally mean poured money into their facilities and into their college hockey program because they realized that rev sharing is coming sooner rather than later, and that this is going to be one of their marquee sports probably in the next 5 years. So they wanted to get the recruits in early. They wanted to lay the groundwork, and their training facility that they have just for the college hockey program is absolutely mind-blowing. I think that Michigan State is probably going to end up being your quote-unquote, not so much dark horse since they're the number 2 team in the country right now, but your dark horse favorite for being the champion this year.
You know what I love is that Augustana ranked for the first time in history. Like, they entered the poll this week at 19. I did read this story this week about college hockey. Augustana hockey for the first time ever has appeared in the poll, which is pretty cool.
Wow,
like that's a cool story, right?
Yeah,
Augie.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Michigan State's the only team on this list that is beaten the other 3 teams that are in the top 4 right now along with them. And
Omaha's receiving votes in the poll.
They are. They soon will be in the poll.
Let's
I can
hope.
almost guarantee
We
it.
can hope.
Because I'd like to see them be in the poll, and I'd like to see NMU be in the poll. That won't happen this year because it has been a down year for my Wild Kitties for sure.
But like, you can't. Like, there's other teams like you can't. I know Michigan is 14-10, but you can't count out the Wolverines. They always seem to pull some magic when it comes to the playoffs. Like, can't count out Michigan, and like Denver always seems to be a team who's right there at the end as well. Like, that's a good college hockey program.
Oh yeah, well DU is just consistently one of the best. But I just want to read something real quick because this is what's been absolutely nuts so far this season. Michigan State against Big Ten foe Minnesota has tied 3-3 twice, won their first weekend against each other 5-3. And then they won this past weekend 9-3. Michigan State has been absolutely pouring goals this season. I don't see how anyone's going to beat them.
Frozen Four is a lot of fun. When we get to that point, that's good hockey. That's fun to watch.
Get back to me next week with the NIL numbers on these guys.
Yeah.
I'm super curious, actually.
I can tell you that last year Celebrini got like $500,000 to play for what was it? Boston College, Boston University. Their front line was getting paid like crazy.
That's awesome.
And they enticed both of them to come together. They were like, "Hey, I think you guys would be really good freshmen together. Haven't you played?" And they're like, "Yeah, we've played hockey together since we were like 4 years old in mini mites. So I think we're going to be just fine."
Wow.
Does that do it?
Do you want the last one?
Yeah, give us the last one.
January is almost over. And in the last 30 days, there have been almost 12 stories regarding VAR on ESPN's website. John, buy or sell, it's time for soccer to do away with VAR.
I'm selling. I think that VAR has been a net positive for the sport. There are instances that you can point to where it has been a technically enforced rule with offsides rather than the spirit of the rule. And to me, this is an issue more with the rule than it is with VAR, which is the enforcement of the rule. I think VAR is great for goal, no goal. VAR is great for foul, no foul. VAR is great for handball, no handball. It gets that right all the time. They get it right with VAR, which is what you want. That's what you want out of your replay system. Where VAR causes a problem is because of the way the offside rule is written, right? The offside rule says if any part of the attacking player's body is beyond the second to last defender, he is considered offside, which is not to me the way the spirit of the rule is meant to be. It's meant to be that the player is beyond the line, right? And to me, that means his feet. Like, I think that we should stop enforcing offside from if his finger was beyond the last defender and start enforcing it from where the player's feet are. Because if the defender's leaning a bit forward and the attacker's leaning a bit the other way, well, yes, according to the writing of the rule, he's offside. But in spirit, is he really? No, he's even. And in the legislation of the rules of soccer, even is onside, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if one guy's leaning this way, one guy's leaning that way, they're, for all intents and purposes, in the same position. I think that the problem with VAR is not with the replay system. The problem with VAR is the offside rule and the way it is written. So I think VAR is a good thing. I think we need to change the offside rule.
I'm buying actually. I think you're pointing out the one giant wart
No?
that comes to the head here.
Okay.
And I think if there's going to be a change, there's going to be a change in the language of the rules, maybe not how the VAR is actually being used. I think if you're going to make the change, I mean, some of the parallels I would draw are this is obviously for the greater good of the sport. Some parallels draw to maybe baseball and some of the changes they made the last few years. But no, I'm all for it. I think you got to get used to it, play this way, or change some of the language that may go more with the spirit of what you believe the rule should actually be.
Good question, Stano.
Yeah, that question was literally just so that I could actually find out what VAR was.
It's video assistant referee is what it stands for.
Oh, I thought the R was for review. See, there you go. You learn something new every day.
Okay. Well, that's going to do it for buy or sell tonight. If you missed it, check it out at soundcloud.com/afterhours1620. Brought to you by Jerry Ryan Clothing and Sportswear. Best suit buying experience in the Midwest, and you can now get it for 50 to 75% off thanks to the big January clearance sale. You need a new suit? You need to get to 78th and Dodge. Check them out. Jerry Ryan, dressing Omaha for over 50 years.
Hi there, folks. It is Dan Campanen here to once again let you know that Pepper Jack's Grill is the best place to go and get exactly what you want whenever you want it. For me, it's a steak gunner Philly with all the vegetables. And you know I got to put that jalapeno juice on it because I like a little spice in my life. But you know what? You can get John's chicken rice bowl that he always gets with the queso on it. That might be my next thing that I try at Pepper Jack's Grill. And you know what's great? I know that right now from where I'm sitting, I am extremely close to one of Pepper Jack's 10 great local locations. So if you want to be like the guys of the After Hours Lounge, go and get you some Pepper Jack's tonight.
Oh, this never happens. We went too long when I'm on a solo show.
We're not behind the clock at all right now.
Never. This hour brought to you by Pyramid Roof Contractors. You got roof problems? You don't need to. You just need to get Pyramid Roof out. Number one roofer in Omaha. PyramidRoof.com. Wanted to talk just a quick segment here before we close things out with our trash takes about some of the coaching moves that I found a little bit curious in the NFL as the carousel spins. Pete Carroll's back? Question mark. Who had this on their bingo card?
Not on the bingo card, but I love it for the Raiders. He's a guy who consistently always seems to be a player's coach.
Yeah.
So much so that Marshawn Lynch was at his introductory press conference.
Well, I mean, there's a history there.
And, he's the kind of guy who, if you need a ship righted, he can try to help you out for it.
Would it surprise you if Marshawn Lynch ends up being the Raiders running backs coach?
It would not. And I would pay a premium fee to just have a channel that's just all Raiders practices, but it's only things that Marshawn Lynch says.
Yes. He is the NFL's most lovable weirdo.
Just listen to him call everyone cuz every single day.
That guy. He's just a barrel of laughs. I love
Dip in
that
the whip,
guy.
boom bop da bap.
But this is an interesting move. I mean, Pete Carroll, we just talked about Andy Reid being 66. Pete Carroll's 73, I think.
Yes, he is.
So he can't have many years left in the tank. But from the reports about Davis saying John Gruden's head was chopped off and he thought he was going to have a football guy in the fold for 10 years. It makes you think that they weren't really planning on Gruden being the coach for 10 years, but maybe he was going to coach for a while and then assume a front office role somehow and transition out of the coach. Maybe that's what they want to do with Pete Carroll, is just have him sort of try to right the ship on the field for a couple of years and then move into the front office somewhere. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's kind of how it reads to me. Because I don't know how much longer Pete Carroll's going to be head coach.
There's a part of me that reasoning of it makes sense, but I almost wonder if they're trying to say, all right, Pete, we want to bring you in, bring in your own staff, bring in people who you think can possibly be a successor to you.
Yeah.
You're going to try to right the ship for 3 years. And then of your coordinators, we want the best one to get moved in to the head coach. And whether or not that means he moves into the front office, because it's always weird when it comes to these guys, because it's I don't know what your role was in Seattle, how, hands-on you were with the drafting and, how active you were in the draft room when it came to that kind of stuff. Obviously, the player development of it all worked out perfectly peachy keen for old Pete Carroll.
The other one that everyone's obviously laughing at is the Cowboys hiring Brian Schottenheimer and now hiring Matt Eberflus as the defensive coordinator. I'll just remind you about the conversation we had yesterday about all the coaches in the AFC and NFC championship games who were flameouts, who had gotten fired, who were bad at their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Who coached teams who played for their conference championship this past weekend. Don't be too quick to judge these hires because you may have to eat some crow. Matt Eberflus was a bad head coach. So was Steve Spagnuolo. Right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of guys who were bad head coaches that have turned out to be pretty good coordinators. So let's just hold on. I'm no Dallas fan. Obviously, I hate the Cowboys. I'm a Commanders fan. They're the number one rival of my favorite team. Far be it from me to compliment them on anything. But you just got to wait and see, because some of these guys, they might be okay. It might be all right.
It might be. So the Brian Schottenheimer.
Schottenheimer, we have no idea. He's never been a head coach.
Yeah. The Schottenheimer portion for me, big head scratcher. When I saw that name come up, I said, Marty's boy? And that was quite literally all I know about him. The Matt Eberflus one, I will give that one a little bit of time because, like you said, bad head coach. has a nose for ball.
Yep.
And obviously has a passion for the game that is unrivaled to many around the league right now. If you watched any of the Hard Knocks with the Chicago Bears, he cares a lot about football.
Well, listen, he got the head coaching job at Chicago because he was a good coordinator.
Yes.
Like, that's what happened.
Mhm.
He was a good coordinator. And so they said, okay, we're going to give you a head coaching job now. He was bad at that. He was a good coordinator at one time, though. That's the reason he got that job. Some guys are not cut out for head coaching. They just aren't. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
So before you throw dirt on that, like, just hold on. It might be okay. The last one, what the hell is going on in New Orleans? Why do they not have a head football coach yet? Like, what is happening? They've interviewed Kellen Moore.
Mhm.
Joe Brady declined a second interview. They've requested an interview with David Shaw, former head coach at Stanford. They interviewed Aaron Glenn. He took the Jets job. They've interviewed Mike Kafka, the Giants offensive coordinator.
Mhm.
Quarterbacks coach from the Broncos, Davis Webb, has an interview request. Darren Rizzi, their interim head coach, has been interviewed. And they will interview Mike McCarthy. Like, what are we doing? Why don't you guys have a coach yet? Are you is it just Mike McCarthy or bust? Is that what we're doing?
I really hope not. But I'm less, because you've got another name on here. I'm less worried about New Orleans than I am about Jacksonville. Because I think in the long run, I know that like the football season is basically year round and has to be viewed that way, especially when the draft is in what, like 3 months? I feel
Yeah.
like it's an April thing. So that's coming up fast, and you want to start to get boots on the ground
Dude.
so that you can start running through it.
New Orleans is in trouble. Like,
I would be less worried about them not making a decision and Jacksonville making too hasty of a decision.
Liam Cohen, like, what is that situation? Like,
My sister, massive Jacksonville fan for reasons that I've mentioned on this show before. If you want to know why, go back and listen. She texted me when they made the hire and she said, "What do you think about this new coach?" And my literal response was, "I have no clue. He's never been a head coach,
mm,
and he's an all right offensive coordinator."
who knows?
And after that introductory press conference, I'm sorry. If you don't know how to say Duval
Yikes.
correctly, there's something about the way that he controls those eyebrows of his that makes me go, you're going to fit in perfectly in Jacksonville. Not as a head football coach, more for the murder portion of things that go on down in Florida.
Okay.
Seems
right.
like he's going to be the guy on the news.
All right, we got to get to our trash takes. So we'll take a quick break here, and we'll come back and close the show out with our trash takes. Hey, it's Wing Wednesday. I know what you're saying. No, it's not. It's Tuesday. Nope, it's Wing Wednesday, and we're doing that right now. Get to our social media, retweet the gift of the wings, get yourself the $25 gift card to Cunningham's. They sent us out the House Buffalo wings and the smoked chicken quesadilla. I'm telling you what, those two things pair so well together. The quesadilla is delicious. As Dan said, it's chicken forward, not cheese forward. It's hearty and delicious. And that House Buffalo sauce at Cunningham's is fabulous. Get yourself some wings, some drinks from either of the two great locations in Old Mill or Blackstone from Cunningham's tonight. Oh, you know what that sound means? Your Tuesday edition of the After Hours Lounge is coming to a close. You don't have to go home, but we do. You thought I was going to say something else. All right, it's time for our Papillion Sanitation trash takes of the night. We're going to get to these quickly. My trash take involves my favorite NFL team, the Washington Commanders. It was announced today that Cliff Kingsbury has elected not to pursue a head coaching job with the New Orleans Saints. And what does that tell you about the health of your favorite franchise? It tells you that things are good. Because I'll tell you what, in the past, if Washington had a good season, the coordinators were out the door just as fast as their feet would carry them. And the fact that Cliff Kingsbury has elected to stay and run it back with Jaden Daniels means things are good in the DC Metro. I am thrilled about this decision, and I am very excited for the future of the Washington Commanders. Dan Campion, do you have a trash take for us on this Tuesday evening?
Yes. It's finally happening, folks. A'ja Wilson, the greatest player in the WNBA. Argue with me if you want to, and I'll shoot you down with all of her accomplishments that she has made on the court. She's finally getting her own shoe. Good job, Nike. You finally made it happen. You finally focused on more than 10 athletes.
All right. Those are our trash takes. You can vote on the poll, find out who had the best and who had the trashiest take. It's only a two-man race tonight, so you got a 50-50 shot at being right. It's me. That's going to do it for the After Hours Lounge tonight. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Jimmy will be back with us next week. This is our last show of the week, but you can catch us on Friday for all the great high school basketball action over on 1180 The Zone. If you missed the show, check it out at After Hours SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/afterhours1620, brought to you by Allo Fiber. Allo, empowering communities since 2003 by offering a suite of integrated products and services that allow you to focus on running your business. You got bad internet, you need to get it better. Get it from Allo Fiber. For Dan Campion, I'm John Schreiner. Happy National Plan for Vacation Day.
I'm a stay home.